Imagine the last successful hunt your family had was so long ago that no one remembers what fresh meat tastes like anymore. The children have stopped asking. The old hunters have stopped making promises. Every morning, the same people leave camp carrying the same spears. Every evening, they return carrying nothing at all. If this happened today, it would be a global emergency. Supermarkets would empty within hours. Governments would declare a crisis. Food would be flown in from somewhere else. But for almost all of human history, there was nowhere else. There were no farms, no stored grain, no livestock waiting behind a fence. When the animals disappeared, they really disappeared. And sometimes they stayed gone for months, which raises a question that's surprisingly difficult to answer. If humans depended on hunting, why didn't they disappear too? For a long time, archaeologists thought they almost did. The story seemed simple. Our ancestors hunted large animals. When the animals vanished, humans starved. It made sense until the evidence started saying something completely different. Not in one place, everywhere. Inside ancient teeth, on stone tools, in forgotten campsites, even in fossilized human waste. Every new discovery pointed toward the same uncomfortable conclusion. The thing that kept ancient humans alive wasn't hunting. In fact, it often had very little to do with hunting at all. And once you see what they were actually doing, it's hard to look at prehistoric humans the same way again. Here's what changed. For most of the Paleolithic, hunters chased the biggest prize available. Mammoths, bison, giant deer. One kill fed the whole group for days. So why waste effort on anything smaller? But archaeologists have a name for what happened next. They call it the broad spectrum revolution. It's not a single event, it's a pattern, showing up again and again across completely different continents, thousands of years apart. A slow, forced shift away from big game toward almost everything else. Rabbits, birds, shellfish, tortoises, dry animals that, on paper, made no sense to hunt. A rabbit takes real effort to catch and barely feeds one person. A mammoth, if you're lucky enough to bring one down, feeds 50. So why did the archaeological record start filling up with rabbit bones instead of mammoth bones? Because the choice was never between efficient and inefficient. It was between difficult and gone. When the big animals thinned out, humans didn't wait for them to come back. They lowered the bar. Every rabbit, every bird's nest, every shellfish pried off a rock stopped being beneath consideration and started being the difference between eating and not eating. Researchers can actually watch this shift happen in the bones themselves. In site after site, as the layers get younger, the remains of large animals get rarer, and the remains of small, fast, hard to catch prey get dramatically more common. Not because humans suddenly wanted rabbit more than mammoth, because mammoth had stopped being an option often enough that rabbit became worth the trouble. And prey wasn't the only thing being reconsidered. The same forced expansion happened with plants. For decades, plant foods were treated as an afterthought, background noise next to the drama of the hunt. But that assumption has been quietly falling apart. Wild grains, roots, nuts that take real time to process before they're even edible. Evidence of this kind of plant use goes back far deeper into prehistory than most people assume. And it wasn't a late addition to the human diet. It was there from early on, waiting to be leaned on the moment meat stopped showing up. None of this was glamorous. Cracking nuts takes patience, digging roots takes time, prying shellfish off rocks in cold water is miserable work for very few calories. But glamorous was never the goal. Reliable was the goal. A mammoth might feed you spectacularly once, if you're lucky. A patch of ground with edible roots will still be there tomorrow and the day after, whether or not the hunt succeeds. That's the trade our ancestors kept making. Chase the big win when it's available. Fall back on the small, steady, unglamorous stuff when it isn't. Never let survival depend entirely on one outcome, and that flexibility might be the real reason we are still here. Most animals can't do this. A specialist predator built around one kind of prey collapses when that prey disappears. It has no fallback because its whole body and behavior are built around a single strategy. Humans never fully committed to one. We were hunters when hunting worked, and something else entirely when it didn't. Gatherers, foragers, opportunists, willing to eat almost anything the landscape still offered rather than wait for the thing we preferred. So when you picture ancient humans, picture this instead. Not a lone hunter standing triumphant over a mammoth, but a group quietly working through weeks with no meat at all, cracking nuts, digging roots, checking the tide line for shellfish, refusing to let one failed strategy be the end of the story. They didn't survive months without meat because they found a clever trick. They survived because they were never actually dependent on it in the first place.